Happy Friday the 13th! And today on Outside the Box Reviews, grab your antiquated handheld electronic games. Make sure you empty your bladder before trying to hide under a bed. Change your underpants in case of bears. We're looking at the NECA Friday the 13th Part 2 Retro Collection figure. And yeah, I thought I was done with these figures. I actually sold off a few of them, but NECA hit my sweet spot with these by going with more Jason. They honestly revealed that Part 6 Jason figure they're doing, and that being one of my favorite Friday the 13th movies, I had to get it. And since I already do have the Roy, which I do kind of like just because it's the first official Roy figure, and it looks like they're doing some more Jasons in the future, I decided maybe I don't need to be all in on this retro line, but maybe I can go all in on Jason. Especially since Friday the 13th figures were really the beginning of my collection, and something I've always really enjoyed collecting. And up front, last retro figure I reviewed was that Leatherface, which was using the 2.0 body. This Jason does not use that 2.0 body, so he's not quite as cool and updated as that Leatherface, but let's take a closer look and see what NECA did with this one. Now, of course, like any good Jason Voorhees figure, this one comes with several implements of death, and because this is NECA's second release of this version of Jason, the original being an old cult classics figure, they're actually just blown up versions of older accessories from what I can tell. Here we have his machete, trademark machete, some nice kind of rusty spots in the paint job there, rivets painted on the handle, a very different handle than we get later on with Jason. This one actually kind of curves in at the bottom. The other one's a little more smooth back here. The rivets are only painted on one side, which is kind of strange, but there's a nice bit of silver going down the back where you can kind of see the blade continuing into the handle. Not a bad accessory. It is beveled on this one end to be nice and sharp. I almost think it would have been funny if they'd beveled the back end, since two of the kills in the movie are with the back side of the machete. Though that was done because it was dull, and the filmmakers, I guess, thought you wouldn't notice. But if we bring in the original release, there is a little paint difference here, but it's a pretty similar sculpt, and honestly, there's not too much of a size difference between the two either. Jason also comes with his pickaxe, which is nicely done, a nice silver tip up here, and a brown handle. Simplistic, but effective. And this one I don't even think is a blown up version of the original. The original here on the right is pretty much the exact same size, exact same accessory, so it's really no different. Though the original does have a nicer paint job, there's kind of rusty bits up here in the metal, and the wood handle is brown with a nice wood texture to it. Actually a couple different shades of brown going on as opposed to this, which is a little more drab. And then last but not least, we have a Pitchfork, and I didn't get this with my original Jason, but I think this came in the box set that came with Pamela Voorhees, but it's not badly done. Nice little end to it here. So there's really not much paint variation on this one either, but you do get some little rivets in there, just sculpted, not painted in. But overall, a decent little Pitchfork accessory. As for Jason himself, I'm not really sure if this incarnation works particularly well in the retro style, which is weird because it feels like it should. Of course, this is famous for being the sack over the head Jason. It was before the hockey mask made its way into the series, so we actually do have a little cloth bag up here. There is a hole for his eye, which is a little undersized in my opinion. You can kind of move it, and you can see right here, you can actually see his eye through it, but it's not particularly a large hole, so it seems like it'd be very hard to see. Now in the film, in the scenes when I believe it was Steve Dash in these scenes, he actually had the bag kind of taped on double-sided tape down around his eye so that it would stay in place. Obviously kind of hard to do with a removable cloth bag here, but you do just kind of have to play with it a little bit to get it to line up right. There's a brown string around his neck that holds the bag in place, but once we turn Jason to profile and behind, we see that the design kind of falls apart. Because they have hard sculpted hair underneath here on Jason, you constantly have the look of that in the hood, as opposed to having soft hair, which would have just let the mask flow as it would. And even especially down here, it becomes a problem where the hair is a hard end that the tie goes underneath. The rest of the clothing, though, I actually really like. These overalls came out great. I actually think NECA has done a very good job doing denim for these figures. For some reason, it seems to come out better than any other cloth they've attempted. So we actually have little golden buckles up here, a lot of nice stitching patterns in there. We have the pockets in the back, and just a very, very nice pair of overalls that look really good. Now, if they just release a figure that had thermals on, I could make a Leslie Vernon custom with these. I don't think these would fit for Victor Crowley if you try to bulk up the body, though. The shirt underneath isn't too bad either. It's the plaid shirt Jason wears in this movie, and it has a nice texture to it. I think it's a little different material material than they used in some of the earlier releases like Ash. This is actually a little more nylon-y feeling, but I actually kind of like it. It seems to move a little better on something this small and doesn't have quite the weight the other fabric did on those early figures. I might be wrong, I haven't messed with those other figures in a long time, but I actually think this is a bit of an improvement. And there also is some good detail work in the shirt and some nice stitching done. And the hands are pretty simple. There are some nice veins on the back, a nice kind of wash over them to dirty them up. We have an open hand on one side and a gripping hand on the other. These might be the same hands we got with Roy. I don't have him handy to check, but this might be the exact same hands. And of course, Jason is wearing a long sleeve shirt, so not really an issue that the paint doesn't go up the arms. And now at the bottom here, we got some simple black shoes. Nothing too fancy going on. Nicely sculpted. Not a lot of paint work on them at all, but they are sufficient. If we come back up here, we can of course untie the hood and pull that off to reveal this ugly mug. And once again, it looks like NECA has just blown up their original sculpt. Here is the Cult Classics version on the right, and it looks like a one-to-one representation, just a redone version of the same head. But that's not a bad thing. I like this head sculpt. NECA did a decent job with it back in the day. There actually is a little better paint application to it now. There's some more texture in the skin. The eyes are better done. Overall, I think it's pretty good. It kind of seems like it comes out a little further on this side. It's a little wider of a face, but that's also a style they've done with these retro figures that I've kind of come to expect. The other weird thing on it is the hair is hard sculpted, not pliable, which I don't know if that's something to do with the sack head going on him, but it's kind of an odd touch because I am so used to NECA using the rubberized hair, and to have something this rigid is a little strange. There's also kind of a different color between this one chunk of hair here and the rest of it on his head. The rest of it on his head's a little more red. This is kind of more brownish here, but still some good paint detailing in there. And NECA did actually sculpt here on the neck of the figure, on the chest of him a little bit. So there is some actual detail in there, making him look not completely human or giving him that more deformed appearance, which I definitely do like. And there is some paint apps going down the neck as well, which I wish they would do with the arms more. For articulation, like I said, it's the 1.0 body, so we are lacking a little bit. The head is on a ball joint. You look pretty far down, but not much up because of that hair. It, of course, gets side-to-side movement. None of that's really hindered with the bag because, of course, it's cloth. Shoulders, we've got a pin socket joints and go out to the side. Forward and back, limited a little bit by the clothing, but not too badly. No bicep swivel. We do have a hinge at the elbow. We can swivel and bend at the wrist. We have a swivel at the waist, which really isn't hindered by the overalls, which is impressive. We just have that one kind of weird joint at the leg, so we'll go forward and out, but it's all the same joint, so it has to rotate to make that turn, so that when you kick forward, the leg is positioned sideways, so there's no upper leg swivel to adjust that. We get a bend at the knee and a hinge at the ankle. So overall, the articulation isn't too bad. It's what we've come to expect with these early figures, but man, the 2.0 body is so much nicer. And for a size comparison, here is the retro cloth Jason figure next to the original Cult Classics version, or the box set version, depending on what you got from NECA back in the day. And we have a lot more articulation on this retro version, despite me not liking it as much. But seeing that the Cult Classics version was either my first or my second Jason figure ever, it always kind of has a soft spot in my heart. But you can see this new Jason is about half a head taller, and like I said, wielding the exact same size accessory. But somehow the accessory doesn't really look misproportioned in the hands of either, in my eye. And here we have the retro Jason next to a more modern NECA Jason figure. I guess this retro figure is now the modern figure, but you know what I mean. More traditional NECA figure done more recently, the Part 3 single-carded figure. And just because I had to see these two next to each other, here he is next to the Part 7 Jason from NECA, the ridiculously oversized Jason. You can see this guy still dwarfs the retro collection. I really hope one day NECA will tackle this figure again and do it more in scale with their other figures and much more movie accurate. And at the end of the day, well, maybe I just have a soft spot for a Jason figure, because while there are a lot of these retro cloth figures I am not a fan of from NECA, it's just not my thing. I've said it before, I just don't have nostalgia for these. These weren't what was going on when I was a kid in action figures. For me, being born in the late 80s, this is just another action figure being made now in my eyes. I just don't have that nostalgic context for it. But I like Jason a heck of a lot, and as I said before, I think I'm going to keep picking up the Jasons in this line. Don't need to own all these figures, but I might just need to own every version of Mr. Voorhees. So I'm going to give this Jason a mild recommend. he's definitely not a great figure. And if you're not a hardcore horror fanatic, you might not enjoy him nearly as much as I do. It's kind of a goofy costume. It's kind of a goofy look in general. And he comes with a pitchfork, which is just kind of weird on its own. But there's just something about this character design that makes me smile. And if you feel the same way, then you might like this figure. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been another Outside the Box Reviews.